Hey, it's DustLevel100 here. The idea for this video spawned from a conversation I had with a friend of mine that's been on the channel already. Now I have him here again today to help explore the topic of politics in games. Is it ever a good idea to incorporate it? And if so, what may be the do's and don'ts? Now I have my own politics, but the person I'm inviting to help me with this topic doesn't really involve himself with it. I figured he might make a good contrast. Now don't worry, I'm not going to go into my own politics too deeply on this channel, but I'll admit that I do like Trump and Alex Jones, which I believe is important information going forward, as I may have a form of bias opposed to someone who's not really involved in politics. The reason I clarify this at all is because this video will be talking about the game Dustborne. This is a game that was, and I quote, made because of Donald Trump's run in 2016. And the reason I picked out this game in the first place was because, well, quite frankly, the game's super woke. Whether you think that's true or not though, it doesn't really matter because that's not what I'm going to be delving into. What I'm mainly looking at is which game is more obnoxious with its messaging, and how could they possibly fix it, if at all. Which leads me to the next game I picked out for this discussion. On the complete opposite side of the political spectrum, we have Alex Jones' NWO Wars, a game that actually features Trump as a Superman-like figure falling from the sky to shoot gay frogs with his laser eyes. Fun fact, did you know that laser's an acronym? Anyway, while I decided not to play Dustborne for reasons I'm sure will become apparent very soon, I actually did play most of the Alex Jones game, and I'll give my thoughts on it towards the end of the video. So without further ado, let's see how good Dustborne is, shall we? So, yeah, about that. The recording my friend had of his experience was all kinds of fucked. So here's a Steam review he said, basically sums up his opinion perfectly. I considered playing this game for myself, but after my friend played an hour of it, he strongly advised against it. So because of that, for those of you who haven't heard of Dustborne yet, and are wondering why I wanted to avoid it so much, here's a good rundown by Madam Savvy, who played the game herself.
Did you actually fucking play this game?
I did. I played the game and I beat it.
There's no...
I dedicated 15.6 hours of my life to understanding this game so that way when I do talk about it and criticize it, I have all of the qualifications and cannot be questioned. The TLDR is you are a punk rock band group that's traveling because you stole intel from a government facility and now you have to go from basically California up to Maine in order to get to Nova Scotia. But you get into some shenanigans along the way. And that's about as much of sense as I can make of the story.
Let's start with this because I see you responded over on X because Red Thread Games, the developer of this game, actually put out a statement just before we went live. Well, let's check it out. Let's see what they had to say. This is exciting. Since we first announced Dustborne, we've read your comments and listened to your feedbacks, hopes, and wishes for the game. As a matter of fact, I gotta be honest, just that statement triggers me. And I'm gonna just throw that up there right now because that's just, I'm so triggered by this.
Did you really make a trigger? Oh, dude.
That's from the game. That's from Dustborne, by the way. Wait, Alex, what are some of those abilities that you gain that are power-ups in Dustborne?
Well, you're introduced at first to the concept of these powers through triggering, which you use to make your best friend in a bathroom while cops are tearing down a vehicle in your garage for some reason. But the pro tag can do no wrong. Pax, of course, always has to be right, so she bullies the good little Catholic boy to do what she wants, putting herself and her friends in danger.
There's cancel?
Why is this tax funded by two different governments under the guise...
I'm sorry, what? What?
Oh, yes. Under the guise of being a disinformation countering game for educational purposes, they submitted requests for funding to the American government through the embassy and received $250,000.
So my tax dollars that I have to pay every quarter because of YouTube went to go fund this fucking game when they could have fixed the bridges?
Yes.
Huh? So yeah, pretty fucking blunt with its messaging. Not surprising though, because as stated, the game was funded by the American and Norwegian government to push messaging. It is quite literally government-funded propaganda, no ifs and buts about it. Anyway, with that brief rundown of Dustborne over, let's look at Alex Jones' NWO Wars. First of all, one thing I noticed immediately is that Alex starts blurting out things like 9/11 was an inside job or the moon landing is a hoax. You know, all sorts of things that he usually talks about on InfoWars during gameplay, to the point where it was kind of annoying at times. Even though I'm a fan of Alex, it was like I was trying to play a game and all of a sudden I was brought back to the reality I'm trying to chill out and escape for a moment. Which takes me to my biggest gripe, the repetitive dialogue. I looked through the files of the voice lines, and the variety of lines was a little disappointing. He has about 2 or 3 voice lines for each boss in the game, and even though Alex himself voiced all of these characters, to my knowledge, there's surprisingly little variation in combat. There were times where bosses only spouted out 1 voice line throughout the whole fight. There's little to no variation here. I think now it's worth talking about the game's premise. Basically, you travel around the world, taking out the New World Order. In case you aren't familiar, the New World Order is a term used in several conspiracy theories, which hypothesize a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. Yes, I just searched that and took the first result. I don't want to go too far into it. The point is, this is a very integral part of the game's plot, so to speak. And because of that fact, under the definition of propaganda, I think this qualifies, whether I agree with its messaging or not. But overall, putting the messaging aside, this game easily has better gameplay than Dustborne, with its whole knockoff Telltale Life is Strange thing going on. That's to say, it's an overly linear game with multiple choices that hardly change anything. But with NWO Wars and its side-scrolling simple shooter gameplay, it's some good fun if you're not too annoyed by the messaging. I'll get back to that in a moment. Now, let's compare the price points of both games and what they offer. When it comes to Alex Jones' NWO Wars, the price is quite steep for what you're getting. I beat this game in under an hour, excluding the secret levels, and I think if it was just a bit cheaper, say maybe $10, it may be more worth it. But then you compare that to the $30 that Dustborne costs. With its very lackluster gameplay, to put it nicely. NWO Wars is clearly a better game for your money when it comes to gameplay. But then we still have the question of politics in these games. Is this all just subjective? Is the level of annoyance to the messaging in these games simply based on what political side you're on? Perhaps to some extent, but I think there's still some measurable qualities here. Perhaps not only when it comes to more political messaging on a moral level, but when it comes to its incorporation in the medium. Let me elaborate. When gameplay takes a backseat, when the game is more focused on virtue signaling and making money for whatever cause they may have, as opposed to making a game with engaging gameplay, now I think that's a lot more measurable. While I don't think Dustborne was ever even going to be a mediocre game given the people's intentions behind making it, let's take a look at the game's message it's trying to tell, and see what I can do with it, as someone who's never made a game. I may go into depth with a whole entire video on that subject, but that's a topic for another day. Who knows, maybe if this video gets like the most views on my channel or something. But I'm gonna hone in on Dustborne's main message about the power of words. If you were to make a game strictly about that, with the utilization of the medium's greatest strength, gameplay, instead of making it a modern audience pandering pile of shit, it could possibly turn out to be pretty good. The Dustborne is a punk band, so instead of making that an excuse to bleach the fuck out of my ears with the worst lyrics I've ever heard for a song, maybe instead of going on this road trip and stealing this random ass hard drive from the government, perhaps they're on a tour or something. I don't know. You can take that in all kinds of directions. But these people won't pursue making a game with that real substance there because they're a bunch of talentless hacks that sold out to the government to make this dog shit. Likewise, to be fair and honest, because even though I like Alex Jones and the game, self-inserts are a huge fucking no-no for me. So right away I'd probably make it a 3D shooter, just because those are better, with a Duke Nukem-like protagonist fighting against the commie censorship in the background of all the cool gunplay. I don't know about you, but I think this kind of over-masculine American hero archetype needs to come back. It's just so enjoyable to see. But are there any games that tackle these political messages with more grace? With an angle more focused on the moral and cultural impact of politics without alienating anyone who's looking for dumb fun? Metal Gear Rising is a really fun hack and slash character action game made by Platinum Games with a political message shoehorned at the end of the game that doesn't feel too intrusive, obnoxious, or preachy. And you might be wondering, if you've never seen it, how does the game pull this off? First of all, Senator Armstrong is a clear caricature of a corrupt politician with a radical viewpoint hidden behind the mask of caring for the people and stopping new wars more than lining their own pockets. Its message is simple as that, and anyone who knows anything about politics knows a majority of career politicians you see are are profiteers of war. And you see the sentiment manifest in some way across just about all over the political spectrum throughout the years, with the exception of more authoritarian circles. So what does all this mean for politics in games? If I have a more political topic I want to discuss through this medium, how do I go about it? Well, I think I've come up with some ideas on what I think may be good rules of thumb that'll help get whatever message you want across, without being too preachy or obnoxious to the player. So, where's the game?
But what about our political messaging?
Okay, where's the game? I can't stress this enough. If you don't have engaging gameplay, the player is not going to be interested in what you have to say. If all the player is doing is sitting around and clicking dialogue options the whole time, your story better be damn good, because that's the only thing that they can latch onto at that point. Look at how Telltale Games did their Walking Dead series. That first game alone was a smash hit because of its storytelling. Even though the choices held little to no meaning and they hardly affect each episode, the story is engaging enough to the point where people don't really give a shit. I mean, you have some people that don't enjoy that kind of game, and that's perfectly fine, but the point is, you have to have something of real substance to get people interested in what you have to say. You can't just shove messaging in someone's face right off the bat when they're expecting to be entertained. And in this medium, you have to captivate them tenfold. If the game sucks, no one will play it. You lose money.
That is one big pile of shit.
Pleased to meet you.
Well, ain't you just the toughest teak mountain man?
Whatever you say. How much you cost, anyway?
Well, ain't that a nice way to talk to a lady?
Oh, I didn't know I was talking to a lady.
Excuse me.
You got a fine way with the women, amigo.
Yeah, regular dandy and a charmer.
This is really just a good rule of thumb for games in general, or any medium of entertainment for that matter. You gotta get people hooked, get them eager to see where you're taking them. When you tell a story or start a game, you're taking them on a journey. You have to get them interested in where you're headed, or they're not gonna want to hop aboard for the whole ride. A perfect example that comes to mind is the prologue of Metal Gear Rising. Look, I know I'm glazing the fuck out of this game, but just bear with me, there's a point to all this, I promise. The game begins with a giant laser-breathing robot dragon for you to take down with ease, building your confidence for the next fight. Then all of a sudden, you fail your mission to protect the Prime Minister, a cyborg samurai kicks the living shit out of you, cuts off your arm, and seemingly leaves you dead on the train to bleed out. And it sets the tone for the entire game. It's dramatic, corny, badass, humorous, and has one of the best soundtracks I've had the pleasure of listening to. Alright, glazing over, here's my next suggestion.
Is actually what life is like. It's
Do you notice that the androids have to stand outside the bus shelter?
Yes.
Because they're gross? Oh, look at that bus.
That looks like one of the Nova buses from here.
Yeah.
Come to the back of the bus!
Go to the back of the... Go to the back. There aren't even chairs.
Because they're not tired.
No. Do you stand? You stand?
It's so bad. It's so much worse than I thought.
First of all, maybe don't compare these androids rising above this human impression to black people during the civil rights movement. Alright, I'm going to be pulling from a few non-examples real quick to get this point across a bit more simply. Concord, lefty propaganda game, ugly Overwatch ripoff, with an even uglier roster of characters. This one's not a game, but I'm sure we'll get more games like this if the rightoids try to get more influence in the gaming space. Lady Ballers, righty propaganda comedy starring hosts from the Daily Wire on Daily Wire Plus. Yes, that's a real streaming service. The movie's lame as hell. But on the flip side, I've also heard of games like BioShock and Fallout New Vegas being great examples of politics done right in games. I haven't played either yet, but the general idea is simple. Keep the messaging to a minimum. And if your political message is radical, just like, you know, don't even fucking bother, just get some help. Well, so much for keeping my channel not political, because for future content, I'm thinking of doing a longer dedicated video about the Act Man, which unfortunately will have to get more political. A video analyzing Red Dead Redemption 2 and pondering if it's woke, as someone I was talking to suggested it was, and I figured replaying the game years later and taking a look at it again would be interesting. And one video that's a lot less political, and that's a simple review of Lollipop Chainsaw Repop. And so once this video's out, there'll be a poll that you can vote on. I'm probably going to come up with all three, but you guys get to choose which one I work on first. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Really does mean a lot. Please consider subscribing, as I'm only at 57 subscribers right now. And I'm going to be working hard on more content in the future, so ring the bell to be notified. But that's all for the day.